This is the welcome from the Allyship crew. We've all got microphones, so this is the pop band you never knew you needed in your lives. We're going to... Has everybody got one? So we're going to talk about allyship and look, why we think it's good for business, but also really picking up on today's theme. I've got to remember to keep this close to my mouth, I've just realised. Picking up on today's theme, I think somebody, Manish said it earlier about expression. Mitesh said expression, not depression. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, that's it. So I think this is a really good opportunity for us to link into that theme from an allyship perspective, and we're going to bring the team in here in a second. My very brief background, I left school at 16. I was a farmer for a number of years before moving into the retail sector, and then obviously moving into financial services. And I've had some brilliant allies right throughout my career, all different sizes and shapes, but they've all really, really helped me as an individual. And so what we wanted to do today was just bring it to life practically, what allyship is, how we think it can help all options from a diversity perspective, but particularly the male population. So I'm going to allow the panel to introduce themselves, starting with you, Matt.
Thanks, Nathan. I'm Matt Lee. I'm a relationship manager at Julius Baer. I'm on the menopause work stream of the diversity project, and I'm a mental health first aider.
I'm Monique King. I work at Julius Baer. I'm head of risk, but I'm also a mental health first aider, but I lead the menopause work stream for Diversity Project.
Angie Kang-Stewart. I'm Global Head of Marketing at Man Group, founding member of Talk About Black. And I'm obsessed with football. I'm obsessed with cricket. I play golf, so you can really catch me talking about my drivers and my iron. So I'm the woman who's really, really into sports. I took a 2-week mat leave, so I'm the opposite, and probably was challenged with that decision as well. So yeah, I just want to say some of the women are also obsessed with sport too.
Hi, my name is Carl Fraser-Allen. I'm an investment analyst at Payden & Regal. Also a part of Talk About Black with Angie, and I'm a part of the diversity committee at Payden & Regal. And I'll share a little bit more about myself as we talk through the discussion.
Brilliant, thank you, panel. And they're sat like this because they're actually in couples, allyship couples, just to be clear. So they are allies to each other, but they will bring their stories to life as we go through. Just why allyship and why have we done this at the Diversity Project? I think three key points. Look, it applies to absolutely everybody. It's really focused on solutions. So it's about helping that individual or group of individuals if it's a larger scale, and it focuses on change. And that's really what today is about from our perspective. So Matt, I'm going to ask you to sort of bring to life your story and how you and Monique became allies.
Okay, so I guess it started from a mental health first aider perspective, but it was brilliant timing as well, because basically about 3 years ago, Monique said to me around Christmas, Matt, I want you to join the menopause work stream. And I said some swear words in there and thought, what's all that about? Why are you doing it? But it happened to coincide with my now wife going through the perimenopause. So it was perfect timing for me personally and my wife. And it was a brilliant journey that I started then. It's thanks to Monique, really. So.
Yeah. So yeah, as Matt said, I met Matt in a sort of, I'd say, a closer capacity, being a mental health first aider. I've known Matt for many years, but never really kind of worked together. And us became kind of mental health first aiders together and driving that mental health framework. And then I started to struggle with my own mental health because of menopause. So then I became very passionate about the two topics and how they interlink. So then knowing how Matt was in the mental health capacity, and it was really interesting listening to all the comments so far. Matt, for me, was that idol of masculinity, the real man's man. And actually, when I got to know him from a mental health perspective, it was totally different to what he portrayed on the outside, and that element of trust and actually looking to someone that could make a difference. But he could stand up and take the flak for, you know, really striving for change in a topic that is really seen as a women's issue. So actually that's why I approached Matt. And yes, he did find it quite strange to start with, but actually it's made a huge amount of difference having a male ally on our programme.
Fantastic. And just tell us a bit about that journey, Matt, because you've gone from, sounds like the stereotypical male to now an expert on the menopause. How's it going in your head for you?
And obviously the moustache goes with it. Well, no, I mean, it is interesting, but again, I think it talks a lot to the way that possibly I'm perceived at work as to how I actually am. That goes to what the boys were talking about on the panel earlier about probably the way the city perceives men to be, if you like. So, I've worked in the city since 1988, and a lot's changed during that period, obviously, and particularly in the sort of job that I do, which is, looking after wealthy people and, a lot of interactions with people internally and obviously externally. You've got a game face, there's a way you should react and behave and all these sorts of things, but that's changed a hell of a lot over the years, and I've definitely noticed it. But I just think in terms of that, just going back to the menopause thing, I think, when I started talking to my mates and my, mates at work and my mates at home, most blokes react in the same way. They just say, I don't need to know about this. What's this all about? It's nothing to do with me. And I say, okay, that's fine. And then what tends to happen is later in the pub or a couple of weeks later or something like that, they'll pull me and they'll just say, Matt, tell me a bit more about that. Because I think that, my wife, my mum, my business colleague, whatever it is, might be going through this. So, educate me, tell me all about this. And I just think that, going back to that sort of vulnerability piece, really, it's just, I'm very happy to talk about what my wife's going through in terms of the perimenopause, and it's very interesting learning more about that. My relationship with my wife's gone through the roof as a result, and what I always say to men is that even if you don't fully buy into this from an altruistic, really mean it basis, every single relationship you've got in your life will benefit as a result of this. And again, it's not just your wife, your partner. It could be, for younger people, it could be their parents or their mum. It could be business colleagues. Again, from a business perspective, it's so important. Half the people in our firm are women, and at some point they're going to go through the menopause, and it happens at a time when they're probably at the peak of their powers, in the same time that men are at the peak of their powers, and men are having their own mental health issues as well. So you've got this kind of perfect storm almost, where men and women in all of the business and personal relationships of their lives are going through so many challenges. And if men and women understand what each is going through, and go back to that communication piece that was spoken about earlier on, if we do communicate about these things, all of those relationships get better. Women don't leave the industry, men don't go through these breakdowns, hopefully. And we can get an amazing result for everybody, really, if people understand it fully. So that's
fantastic. Well, thank you. I'm going to nip over to Angie and Carl to bring to life your story. Maybe you start, Carl.
So I'm going to say the F words, and that's football. I was on the PE team as a youngster. I was a professional footballer. And that's my journey. And the reason why my story differs is because I actually had the reverse in terms of imposter syndrome. So in my mind, I left school at 16. I was going to be a professional footballer. I'd played nationally. And I've got a heart condition, which meant that I had to retire very prematurely. So to switch from that aspect to then go into the city where I'm competing with people that I actually felt inferior to, in terms of, you've got a Cambridge degree, or you've got 10 years of experience, or you're doing this and I'm doing that. And I've got an England cap, but it doesn't really do much in terms of research, which was what I aspired to. And I met Angie when I joined Wellington, and we spoke about male role models initially, but Angie's my female role model in terms of just a presence, a confidence, this is what I contribute to a room, this is what I contribute to an organisation. And from there, it was just like, okay, how do I mimic or sort of get to that level of confidence or sort of knowledge where I can command that respect and be able to deliver. And that's sort of how it began, in terms of just being in initial meetings, seeing how she led the room. And yeah, that's how we sort of had that initial relationship or got to know each other.
Fantastic. Go on, Angie, you bring it to life from your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we met at Wellington. I think Carl probably joined a couple of years after I did. And I think I was just impressed with this outspoken, vivacious young man who had real aspiration. But, you know, coming into an industry when you were a professional footballer and being on that journey, and it's not just the way maybe our industry have the academic backgrounds, but it's also the way you talk, the way you speak, the way you present yourself. And the kind of things that Kyle was being challenged by were very, I think, relevant as we were talking about diversifying and having representation. Because I think somebody said on an earlier panel, I think it was Matt actually, you spoke about representation, and if you can't see it, if you can't feel it, and you can't be it, right? So we have very little representation for certain people in our society. And I think as I've matured into my career, I've definitely been more outspoken about the gaps, what we need to do, making the uncomfortable comfortable. And maybe it's not outspoken, but what we need to normalize in the room. And I think that allyship with Kyle was because I saw so many things in him that I saw in myself earlier in my career, but I did not have the confidence to speak up. And, you know, I think I heard this a bit as well, maybe from you, Manish, is that you kind of live with the guilt of things that you didn't say rather than what you did say, and maybe the silence of what you accepted. And I just wanted to encourage him, and, you know, speaking about the intersectionality between race, you know, masculinity, femininity, and, you know, what is acceptable in the workplace, and also stereotypes. And I mentioned the sports, because it's not a stereotype related to women, but I'm obsessed, right? And also, you know, we have a UK society which allows men to do shared parental leave, and I took a 2-week maternity leave, yet the judgment that was put on me, because I decided to do 2 weeks of maternity leave, my husband did a whole year, was very high, especially from women in the organisation. And I think it's just breaking down these stereotypes that we're supposed to conform to, and I think the relationship that we built up, and, you know, I've been homeless and being able to speak more about being homeless in the workplace, and the amount of people that contacted me on LinkedIn after that was, you know, I was I was in a housing association flat, I was nearly on the brink of destitute, you know, just having those really, and we've spoken a lot about these things, and I think that is the kind of allyship that we built up, which has now taken us through, you know, leaving Wellington, going on to different roles, and seeing Kyle become a credit analyst has been very, very, I think I bask in some of that glory myself.
Excellent. And he's about to be a dad. Is that right? It could be any moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually very nervous. My phone's been vibrating, and I'm like, hopefully she can wait.
If you run off, we know where you've gone.
Sorry.
If you run off, we know where you've gone.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I think just sort of back to the questions in terms of bringing it back to allyship as well, was some of the things that I think has been organic with our relationship, and what I think is really important is just around being the voice of the unheard sometimes. Having that that desire to share that common foundation. Like, we are completely different. She's female, I'm male, I'm black, she's Asian, but there's a common understanding that we can empathize with whatever we're both trying to achieve, we're striving for. And just as much as I know that Angie's vocal on my part when I'm not in the room, it's the same for me as well. And I think a key part of allyship is just providing that platform to be able to sort of engage, discuss, talk about the issues that we're discussing today. And that's something that's been present throughout our relationship to this day.
Brilliant. Maybe Matt, Monique, just sort of share for anybody who's sort of sat in the audience or online, like how do you start this? How do you go about it? You know, you've obviously done some brilliant work together, but you've built up a relationship, you've built some trusts, you've opened up, you've been vulnerable about where you're at. So how did that start? And
I think for me it's trust. You have to trust the person that you feel you can be vulnerable with, and actually also pick the people that you know are going to fight for you. So to your point, when you're not in the room, what are they going to say about you? So I think for Matt, seeing him in that mental health capacity and actually being vulnerable and sharing your own experiences, etc. For me, he was the perfect fit for the kind of the menopause work that we needed to do, because it was, when we started, a difficult topic. Like, you know, people weren't open to us discussing it. So you needed that kind of character that was actually prepared to stand up and say something that people might not be comfortable with, and actually keep going and not fall down at the first hurdle. So yeah, that's exactly how I see Matt. So when there's a difficult topic to cover, he's my go-to. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Thank you, Monique. I mean, it's kind of having thick skin from my. I mean, again, it's talking to blokes most of the time about stuff because it's quite interesting. I mean, I don't talk to a huge amount of women about this internally, although that is improving. So, a very good team member of mine 2 years ago when I started doing this, I said to her, whenever you want to talk, no, I don't want to talk about this. F off, Matt. And after about a year, she started to kind of talk to me about it, and it was quite interesting. Who is Monique? Yeah. And it now becomes quite a funny thing in the team that we kind of almost banter about it, kind of thing. Which, definitely within our, going back to the safe space thing, I think within our team, it's definitely a safe space to talk about it. But I don't know if that broadens out more to around the office, because there's certain people, and there were certain women in our organisation that don't want to engage with men. I mean, there's a menopause coffee workshop, I think, and I said, it'd be great to get involved in that. And one of the co-contributors said it's just for women, kind of thing. And I'm okay, I get that. I've got no problem at all with that. And if that forum needs to be for just women to talk about those issues, absolutely fine. I think it would be great if blokes could join those, because I think men again would learn more about their own relationships that they're possibly struggling with if they could find out from a third party, almost somebody a bit detached from their most personal of relationships, a bit more about it, kind of thing. So because blokes are rubbish about asking about things, right? I mean, it's they're awful about asking about their own issues, let alone and it, talking about the whole those women relationship piece. I think from an early age, men and boys are unfortunately, a lot of areas of women's health are stigmatised. I remember at school, the way that boys talked about girls at school and what was going on with their bodies, it was shocking. You come to the maternity piece, and it's only in recent years where maternity has not been frowned on at all. It certainly was when I joined the city. Now we've got paternity leave, which is fantastic. And I wish, and we got a piece later, I think, about paternity leave, and I wish I could have taken longer than the 2 weeks that I did. I really do. But it just was frowned upon all those years ago when my two daughters were growing up, sort of thing, which is a real shame. But what you can't have your time again. What you can do is hopefully kind of educate and allow and make it more acceptable for youngsters now to go through those things, and to really want to engage in that whole parenting piece. So, yeah.
Fantastic. I'm going to put a question up just on the screen for people to answer in the background. Oh, wrong way. While we keep talking. So in the room and online, if you could do the QR code and give us your answer to that question, and we'll flick it up in a second. But just while people are doing that, so just bring to life for us the relationship that you've had, and obviously yours, Kyle, and Angie, has gone over a number of years. How have you developed as individuals? So, and I can obviously see the benefit for Kyle, but also, Kyle, how have you developed, and Angie, how have you developed, and has this given you a different perspective on helping other people with allyship?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is social mobility. So talk about Black, there's a substream of basically trying to get more people that look like myself into asset management. And some of the things that we challenge or we battle with are microaggressions. And what I mean by that is, I remember being in a meeting once, and I said, they was. And I was pulled up and said, Kyle, I think you'll find that it's they were. And it didn't detract from what I was trying to deliver in terms of my message, but it was a quick reminder that this is not an environment that I'm typically most comfortable with. So in terms of like blending into the system, it's a constant reminder, sense check of vocabulary, speech, etiquette, delivery, pace, which I think are important, but people need to be mindful that when things like that are raised, in my opinion, in that instance, unnecessarily, it reminds you that you're not a part of the system and you need to blend in. So Manesh gave me a shout out earlier because of the beard reference. Until COVID, I couldn't grow facial hair. So I made the most of it. And it was that sense of, I need to blend in. I need to be clean cut, clean shaven. I need to be shaved at the sides, low front, to not look intimidating, look like I belong here. So it's only now that I've got the confidence, seniority, knowledge, respect, credibility, where I feel like, okay, I can be my authentic self, as opposed to trying to appease the masses from from what's been my predecessors. So I definitely think it's a case of people believe that they need to blend in to change the system, and I think to an extent you do. And hopefully we can change that in terms of what value can I bring to this organisation, what value can I bring to my team, and how can I support others going through that transition, which once again links to allyship, but that's where we need to move and progress to.
Brilliant. Angie?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, right? So I think I spent 10 years of my career trying to blend in. I actually did find it easier maybe than some. You know, being a woman that liked sports, I did get invited to things that other women didn't. I had access, maybe because of that. But you know, I've been married for 28 years. I have a 24 and 21-year-old now, and a 5-year-old. Don't ask about that. So I think my husband and I, my husband's black Jamaican. He was born here. I was born here. We've definitely had different life experiences, and there's so much in Kyle when we were having the conversations that reminded me of conversations at home, and I really loved when people spoke about in the first panel, spoke about who inspired them. My husband is definitely one of my biggest inspirations, if not my singular inspiration in life. But a lot of what Kyle was telling me is feedback I've heard from him and other kind of black men in our industry, this kind of concept of making yourself smaller, making yourself fit in, you know, blend in, talk better than the next man, dress smarter than the next man, you know, talk quieter than the next man to make everyone else around you feel more comfortable, rather than bringing your authentic self and being the brilliant person you are as an individual. Whether you say ask or asks is not indicative of your intelligence, and I think that's what Kyle and I spoke a lot about. And with those of you with young Gen Zs, you're never going to understand anything that they say because they speak a different language. So they talk to me about, and I think, you know, I think you said it, Matt, you said about how under 28, they speak about mental health all day, and they do. I have no idea what trauma dumping was until they told me that's what I do to my hairdresser on a regular basis. So, you know, I think it is really, really important to remember that language, terminology, it changes, it shifts, it evolves, and our role as leaders in this industry and being an ally is making sure that the person you come across that shows so much potential and is struggling with their mental health because they feel they don't fit, it's your role to create the environment where they feel valued, where they do fit, and that environment is one of flexibility, of maturity, of evolution, not something that is static. And this is why I've always had we've spoken about this. A lot of our firms talk about culture and meritocracy as a singular. If a culture is to be for everyone, it needs to be something that's living, breathing, and flexible. And if someone is a good cultural fit, there's not just one good cultural fit. And meritocracy falls into a lot of the same things. And I think that's where, you know, Kyle and I have spent a lot of time talking about these things.
And just to add to that, so it's been, I think, 7-8 years that we've known each other, and day one, Angie said that. So that's something that once again gave me that confidence, and once again the allyship that we've formed as a result of that view and the fact that we've got that shared understanding to be an advocate and provide that confidence to get to the next level.
Brilliant, thank you, Moni. Matt, what's your views on the question?
I think for me it's just being able to be vulnerable, and it doesn't matter about the topic. So I'm vulnerable at social mobility, you know, all different types of diversity, but my thing has been menopause because I can talk about it from a personal experience and mental health, but actually the fact that I can be vulnerable and have an ally, I could go to Matt and ask him to help me with anything. It doesn't have to be a particular topic. So I think that's what allyship for me is, somebody who's got your back. Yeah.
Brilliant. Matt, you need a mic just to, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know really. I guess it's you know, to Monique's point there. I guess it's just that vulnerability piece. I think, you know, over the years it's become easier, but it's still not easy. It's difficult to put your heart out there for people, but it does strengthen relationships, and it's something that I see for my two daughters, and you know, they talk about mental health all the time. They're 24 and 22 almost, and it's that age group where they're so enlightened, where it's just so normal to talk about these things. And that kind of started about 10 years or so ago in terms of their journey. One's anxiety, one's OCD. The whole menopause piece reminds me now of where mental health was about 10 years ago, when it was just starting to hit the kind of mainstream media and the like, and the diagnoses were going in and people were questioning what the diagnosis was and whether it was the right thing. But ultimately it's about getting people to get the right help that they need, whether it's just talking to their friends at work or their colleagues at work, or if it's the medical help they need. But you know, it's talking about stuff, and again, it's just great that people can do this, but you have got to be vulnerable to put yourself out there in the first place, and to take all those bullets from your mates and your colleagues. You know, I've got a nickname, Menopause Matt, and some blokes chuck it at me as if it's a really bad label. I don't think that it is. It's just what they call me. It doesn't bother me at all. But you know, I've got quite thick skin, so I don't really care about it. But it's quite interesting when you receive all these kind of arrows, and you think you know people, and sometimes you don't. I'm talking about the middle-aged blokes that fire stuff at me, and I just think, you know, I wish that they'd enlighten themselves. Ignorance is such a failure, really, isn't it?
Brilliant. Well, what an excellent note to end on. You're my role model today, Matt, for standing up for that. So well done. Look, I just want to say a brilliant thank you to this panel. Awesome stories, really bringing this to life. And for Kyle and Angie, Monique and Matt, a big round of applause, please.